Imagine this. You're a skilled craftsman in a bustling city. Life is good. Then, the ground shakes. Hoof beats thunder. The Mongol horde has arrived. Your city falls. Your family is gone, and you are dragged away in chains. A captive. This was the terrifying reality for millions during the Mongol conquests. But for some, this catastrophic event wasn't the end of their story. In fact, for a select few, it was the beginning of an unbelievable new chapter. What did the Mongols do with the vast numbers of people they captured? While many faced grim fates, the Mongols were pragmatic rulers. They had an empire to build, and they knew they couldn't do it alone. They were always on the lookout for talent. Blacksmiths, doctors, translators, merchants, engineers. Anyone with a valuable skill could be spared the sword and put to work. This wasn't just about forced labor. It was a sophisticated system of human resource management on an epic scale, turning the conquered into the conqueror's greatest assets. Today, we rediving into one of the most incredible stories from this era. The tale of a Chinese prisoner who went from facing certain death to becoming the great Khan's chief weapons engineer. His name, and the names of many like him, have often been lost to history, but his impact was undeniable. Let's call him Li. Li was a master siege engineer from one of the great cities of the Jin dynasty in northern China. He had spent his life designing and building powerful catapults and crossbows to defend his home. When the Mongol armies, led by the legendary Genghis Khan himself, laid siege to his city, Li's machines inflicted heavy casualties on the attackers. The Mongols, who were masters of open-field cavalry tactics, initially struggled against heavily fortified Chinese cities. They were taking too many losses and spending too much time on each siege. When Li's city inevitably fell, he was captured. He likely expected a swift execution as a man who had killed many Mongol warriors. But Mongol scouts had been observing the siege. They had seen the power and ingenuity of his defensive weapons. Instead of being led to the executioner's block, Li was brought before a Mongol general. Through a terrified translator, he was asked one simple question. "Can you build those for us?" For Li, it was a choice between death and service. The choice was obvious. He was now a captive, but he was a valued one. He was given food, resources, and a team of artisans, also prisoners, to command. His new task was to turn his defensive knowledge into an offensive weapon for the Mongol war machine. This was the genius of the Mongol system. They didn't just destroy, they absorb it. They took the best technologies, the best strategies, and the most skilled people from the lands they conquered and made them their own. Li and his team of captured engineers began designing new siege weapons, bigger and more powerful than anything the Mongols had ever possessed. They created massive traction, trebuchets, giant catapults that could hurl enormous stones, flaming projectiles, and even diseased animal carcasses over city walls, spreading terror and destruction. These weren't just simple copies of Chinese designs. They were hybrids, combining Chinese engineering principles with Mongol requirements for mobility and rapid assembly. The weapons had to be broken down, transported on horseback across vast steppes, and quickly reassembled for the next siege. This mobile artillery unit became a game-changer. Suddenly, the Mongols' greatest weakness, siege warfare, was becoming their new strength. Cities that could have held out for months now fell in weeks, or even days. The psychological impact was immense. The sight of these terrifying engines being assembled outside their walls was often enough to convince a city-esque defenders to surrender without a fight. Li's success did not go unnoticed. He was eventually brought to the attention of the great Khan himself. Imagine that moment. A prisoner of war, standing before the most powerful man in the world. But he wasn't there in chains. He was there as an expert, a respected engineer whose skills were crucial to the expansion of the empire. He was rewarded with riches, titles, and a position of trust. He had gone from a captive on the brink of death to a high-ranking official in the Mongol administration. His story is a powerful example of the Mongol approach to empire. They created a surprisingly multicultural and meritocratic system within their military and government. A person's origin mattered less than their ability. We see this pattern again and again. Uyghur scribes were used to create a written script for the Mongol language. Persian administrators were brought in to manage the complex bureaucracy and taxation of their new territories. European craftsmen like the Parisian goldsmith Guillaume Boucher were captured in Hungary and ended up designing elaborate silver fountains for the Khan's court in Karakorum. These captives weren't just cogs in a machine. They were the gears that made the machine run. They facilitated a massive transfer of knowledge, technology, and culture across Eurasia. The Silk Road, once a perilous route for merchants, was secured under Mongol rule, leading to an unprecedented era of trade and exchange known as the Pax Mongolica, or the Mongol Peace. Gunpowder from China, medical knowledge from Persia, and artistic styles from across the continent all flowed freely, not in spite of the Mongol conquests, but because of them. Of course, we can't romanticize this. For every skilled artisan who found a new life, countless others suffered and perished. The Mongol conquests were brutal and devastating on a scale that is hard to comprehend. Cities were razed, and entire populations were wiped out. The story of Li, the engineer, doesn't erase that horror, but it adds a layer of complexity to our understanding of this empire. It shows us that the Mongols were more than just ruthless warriors. They were pragmatic empire builders who understood the value of human capital. They knew that an axe was good for chopping down a tree, but a skilled carpenter could use that tree to build a palace. By identifying and utilizing the skills of their captives, they were able to consolidate their power and manage an empire that stretched from the Pacific Ocean to the heart of Europe. So the next time you think of the Mongol horde, remember it wasn't just made up of warriors on horseback. It was also powered by the minds of people like Li, the captive engineers, the enslaved scribes, and the conquered administrators who, out of a desire for survival, helped build one of the largest empires the world has ever known. Their story is a stark reminder that history is never just black and white, and that even in the darkest of times, human ingenuity and the will to survive can lead to the most unexpected outcomes. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey into the past. If you found this story as fascinating as I do, please hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into the hidden corners of history. Let me know in the comments what you think. Could you have made that choice? Until next time, stay curious.